Hey everybody, Andrea Waddell here. Welcome to the studio. Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I finish an abstract painting. If you wanted to see how this one started, there are two videos that talk about that process. Today's video is about taking a painting over the finish line and knowing when to stop and when a painting is finished. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I manage my shapes, how I make decisions about color, and especially how I know that a painting is done and just to stop fiddling with it. So I hope you get something from watching this video. Let's jump to it. Before we jump in, I want to say about materials what I'm using. For these last layers, I'm working with R&F Pigment stick only. So the beginning layers were done in acrylic, and then the final layers I use R&F Pigment stick. And I'll have links to that in the notes below. But if you don't know R&F Pigment stick, they're pretty fabulous. They are essentially very high quality oil paint in a tube, in a stick form. So there's a little bit of linseed oil, there's a little bit of wax, and there's a huge amount of pigment. So they are kind of like crayons, really. And you can work with them and to create marks, or you can work with them with a brush like you would any other kind of oil paint. So that is how I strengthen the color, by making a choice of materials for this final layer. Okay, let's jump in. So when I get to this stage of an abstract painting and we're nearing the end, or at least in my mind, I'm nearing the end, I'm not looking to reinvent the painting. I'm just refining the structure based on what's already there. So I'm adding these deeper values with shapes and lines. And I'm using R&F Pigment stick here on top of my acrylics. And that's going to create a pretty big contrast because there's so much pigment in these fabulous R&F Pigment sticks. And I love them because you can work spontaneously. And so at this phase, it's small tweaks, shadows, lines. I'll be really looking at the relationships between the shapes that are already there and trying to find ways to put them into a better conversation. And some of that is going to involve clearing, let's say, the visual noise. And I'm really doing that with my whites. So I'm basically calming whole areas with these whites and using them as a unifying field. And now I'm following the structure that's already there, but I'm deepening the color because the whole painting had looked pretty flat. So I'm not here, and I'll see this in a minute, paying attention to the shape. I'm just trying to fix the color, rotating it regularly. And now I'm kind of looking at these shapes, and they're a little bit awkward. So I'll start editing those in a minute. But right now I'm just adding differences, and I'm using my R&F Pigment stick. See how you can just scribble with that? So that the white areas aren't treated exactly the same. And I'm just mushing this around with my hands, with the gloves, because it creates this vibrant, alive quality. And in that upper portion, I want it to be a white unifying neutral, but it needs to be different. So then when I stepped back and I looked at this blue area, it was too dark and it was pulling focus. And same with this side, it didn't have enough contrast, so I'm just working with what's already there, modifying the color a little bit, and then I'm regularly stepping back to see how everything that I do balances out. I'm looking to see you. If I'm standing in front of you, that's the fun part about filming. You've got to be mindful of the camera. So I'm making another shape, and because it's R&F pigment stick and it's luscious, look what happens. I'm just using that extra blue on top of the purple, and I've got something that's glowing. And then I'm going to do that again up there in the white. So your eye is going to travel. It's going to bounce from left to right because there's the blue, and then it's going to bounce upwards. That's what I mean by creating some coherency in terms of the color. We're going to put it the same color in different spots. So again, this is a white R&F pigment stick here that I'm using, and I'm just scribbling it in. I'm pressing pretty hard. You need to press pretty hard with these pigment sticks when you're working wet on wet. So you alter the way the pressure, you try different pressure types, and you can see how far you can push the pigment stick. So now this centerpiece was really, it was busy and not working. So I've been looking for this through multiple layers now. And what I've done here is I've stepped back for a really long time. You don't see this when I'm filming. You think I'm making these really fast decisions. Sometimes I am, but sometimes I have to step back for quite a while and look at the painting, which I see this often when I'm running workshops. People just stay on top of the painting, and if you don't step back from it, you really can't see it. So now what I've done is I've modified that shape a little bit. I've made it more interesting to me. And now the upper part, I'm trying to find something that pulls the eye upwards. So I put those dark shapes up there at the very top. It's still not there yet, but it's coming together. You can see you've got these disjointed shapes that aren't in conversation with each other yet. And I'll find my way to a better conversation. Those are the R&F pigment sticks. That's what they look like. That's what my table looks like. I can talk about that in another video. But it's wonderful because you can just grab at them, and it allows you to stay really spontaneous, so you don't have to sit around mixing the paint. You just have all of your sticks right there. So this is kind of showing you that I'm standing in front of this for a really long time. I don't know why I'm staring at the camera. I didn't edit this piece out. But oh well, I'm going to leave it in. So now, as I'm thinking about my shapes, that yellow line, it worked sort of in the underlayer, but it doesn't work anymore. So it's basically the edge of that shape. That round edge it was a distraction. And so now, since I like the blue shape to the right, what I'm doing is when I like something, I look around to see what is pulling focus away from that area that I like. It looks like a little upside down pig or whatever. And it was that yellow line. So that's why I took that out. That's an example of what I'm doing all the way through. But what I'm doing right here is my eye is traveling around to anything that I like. So I look to I keep my eye focused on the right or on the left, and then remove the distraction. So I'm trying to find my way to that middle piece here. The middle ground isn't quite there. And what I'm using, I think I'm using here is a chip brush, because I got so tired of washing brushes when you work in oil, and it just they never really get clean. I use chip brushes that I get from the hardware store, and then I throw them out when I'm done with them. Sometimes the little brushes come off, little pieces of it come off. You just pull it off and deal with it. I'd rather do that sometimes, not always, than have to deal with washing brushes. So now that green shape on the bottom is awkward. I kept some of these realistic, slow painting process pieces in this video so that you don't get the impression that you just bang, bang, bang this thing out, one decision after the next. You really, really need to step back and look at it. Step back and look at it. So now the shape on the left is a little bit, it's boring. You can kind of see it's just a square. So I'm going to want to deal with that. I'm going to want to deal with the shape, the green shape at the bottom, because it's an important piece of the painting. It really anchors things in. I haven't quite figured out the center yet, but I'm watching to see how my eye travels. And a lot of this painting is about editing out visual noise. Like those lines there to the bottom left, they were placed spontaneously. And when I place a line like that, I know that I don't have to stay committed to it. Maybe I'll keep it, but maybe I won't. I always, when I'm working with lines, that's the way I'm looking at it. Maybe this thing will stay, maybe it'll go. These lines will go. So I'm working on that shape again, and I'm playing around with hard edges, soft edges. So soft edges create let's call it maybe a soft atmosphere, and they push backwards, they recede. Harder edges pull us forward, and we focus on them. So you can see to the left, to the right, to the bottom, we've got, and then the one in the middle, we've got too many of them. So I'll probably deal with that at some point in my final editing process here. I haven't gotten rid of those lines yet. I'm kind of working around them, but I will address them. You can see how awkward that green shape is on the bottom when I'm watching this back, but I'm just and now that shape is still a little awkward to the left. I haven't fixed that yet, but I will fix it. Here's where I got to, and this is what it became. So what I did here was address the shape to the left. You can see it became a lot smaller, and changed the proportions of it. I kept working on that shape in the center and made it a focal area, even though it's the center. I thought like a bright spot right there creates a really interesting push-pull. And then I adjusted the shape to the left, to the right, I mean, the one that looked like a little horse. There were too many areas. The shapes to the right, to the left, to the bottom weren't in conversation, so to speak. I know that sounds abstract, but that's kind of what was going on. And what I mean by conversation is your eye doesn't know what to look at. And so in this case, now when I finished it, there's a relationship between the green shape and the dark shape above it, and then the previous horse-like shape to the right is in a better conversation with the blue shape to the left, and then the centerpiece is just a bit of luminosity. And so that's how I finished this painting. So for the question of how you know when a painting is finished, multiple things. I think the first and most important thing is it feels done. I know that's not very satisfying, but there comes a point where you've been poking at it and working at it and layering it, and then you just, as you're going through that process, you'll see areas that work. You know what I'm talking about. Like, yay, that's cool, that area works. And then another area works. And then at one point, the whole thing feels like it's working. So there's that intuitive part. The other thing I think when you train your eye a little bit more is, do you flow through it? Or is anything like glaringly distracting? So, when I got to the end of this used to be really bright blue, and it was bumping up against this green shape, so I knew that that had to get toned down. And once that was toned down and I was looking here and flowed down here, then I knew that whole area, that whole sequence was done. And originally when I finished, I had an instinct to keep working. I wanted to have more bright white up in this corner over here, but I waited overnight, and I looked at it again, and I thought it would not be a good decision, because if I put this white up there, then this wouldn't glow in the same way, because it would just be repeated over there. So, you know, letting it rest overnight when you think it's finished is a good idea. And then coming in and looking at it the next day and thinking, actually, no, that holds together pretty well. And what I can say, the final thing for me is, would I put this on my wall or not? And I'm a pretty harsh judge of my own work in terms of putting it on my wall. But if I'm like, yeah, that would fit on my wall, I would do that, then I know that, then I also know it's done. And a final thing that you can do is use one of those apps. You can find them, I forgot which one I use, Art Rooms, and it's not very expensive to subscribe to it. But what you can do is it'll scale the image. You'll put in the proportions, and then it'll show you all these different rooms where you can place the painting. And I do that, especially when I'm working on a commission. I do that, and then I show my client. But even for myself, working on paintings, I put it in multiple rooms, and if it holds in the room and there's no, like, glaring distraction, then I know it's done. Hope that's helpful. I'll see you next time. By the way, if you want to come on retreat with me or take a workshop from me, all of that information is in the notes below, and I'd love to see you in class. But meanwhile, I'll see you next week here on